Johnson & Wales University and the Distinguished Visiting Chef Committee proudly presents the Distinguished Visiting Chef Series, an educational resource and video reference library for culinary students and professionals. Today's guest, Chef Ann Cooper.
I had the pleasure of having dinner with Chef Cooper last night and finding out a little bit about her. If you order one of these, there is absolutely no way I can start presenting and telling you all of the great things that Chef Cooper has done in her life. She's going to do that over the next 2 hours. But I want you to listen to her message. She's an amazing lady. She's done an amazing thing with young people, trying to educate them on their eating habits, and hopefully she's going to give you some pointers on what you can do to help when you get out of here. I'm really hoping that at the end of this session that you're going to have a lot of questions to ask Chef Cooper, because these are special times. You don't get a lot of them. You spend 2 or 4 years in Johnson & Wales and you learn how to cook, but there are times in your life when you meet people that are going to be very, very meaningful to you, who can really add something to your lives and add something to your careers. And this is one of those special times where Chef Cooper has done some great things in our life. And you know, when you get an opportunity like this, you should take advantage of it because it don't come very, very often. So without me taking up too much of her time, I'd like to introduce Chef Cooper and Chef Marguerite, who is also going to assist her. And I think that the both might up.
You never know what could happen up here.
But without further ado, I'd like to introduce our two chefs today. So thank you. Please give them a round of applause.
Thank you. So I'm going to start off by telling you how this is going to play out today. First of all, I'm going to talk to you for a few minutes. Then I'm going to do a PowerPoint. The PowerPoint goes by itself, so we're not going to take Q&A during the PowerPoint. After I do the PowerPoint, we're actually going to cook a couple of things, just a couple of things. And really, the cooking, you know, you guys are here in a culinary school. There's so many great teachers here. There's so many amazing culinarians. You don't really need me to come in and teach you about food. You got lots of great food around you. But we're going to cook a little food, and really, we're cooking school food. So it's a foil for talking about what we do. Then we're going to do a little tasting, and then we're going to have a bunch of time for Q&A. And you guys have to ask me questions. Otherwise, I'm going to ask you questions and make you come up here and answer them. So there you go. So first, we're going to take a little test, because this is about school food. How many of you want jobs when you get out of school? Yay. How many of you think it's harder now than it was 5 years ago to get a culinary job? Great. How many of you would like a job that pays, not right when you graduate, but maybe 5 years out, 60 to 80,000 and has 50 days off a year, no holidays, no weekends, mostly summers, all off? What do you think? Come on. You wouldn't want to make 60 or 80,000 and have 50 days off a year and not work nights, weekends, and holidays? Yeah, you do, right? So how many of you would ever think about going and cooking in schools? None. It's okay. You don't have to lie. I want to tell you that I am the most unlikely candidate, and we're going to ask that question again when we're done, the most unlikely candidate to be a school food lunch lady in America. I spent my entire career in white tablecloth restaurants. I've worked in restaurants and hotels and cruise ships all over this country and overseas. I never fed a kid and didn't care what they ate and didn't want to know. My worst nightmare was one of my hostesses or servers coming into my kitchen on Saturday night going, "Chef, there's a screaming kid on table 18. What do you want me to do?" And I'd say, "Ask them to leave. What are they doing in my restaurant?" But along the way from there, I really got into sustainable food, and we're going to talk a lot about sustainable food. But I really got into sustainable food, and I wrote a book called Bitter Harvest. And in the mid to late 90s, I got asked to go to the Ross School in East Hampton, New York, and take over the program and design a program that would feed really good, great food to kids and teach them about food. So I had this blank slate. And the owner of the Ross School said to me, "I eat organically and naturally. That's what I want for the kids. Figure it out." So I hired 27 of the best chefs I knew to come in and work with me to see what would it take to feed kids and teach them about food. And that's what we're going to talk about. And I hope when we're done here today that when I ask the question again, who might consider school food, a few people raise their hand, because I think it's an amazing, amazing career. I think what we've been able to do as chefs, myself, Marguerite, there's a number of other chefs all across the country now that are doing this. It's great. It's great work. It's really exciting. It's really interesting. You can cook great food and you can have a life at the same time, which often the restaurant industry doesn't allow you, as I know really well from many 60 and 80-hour weeks over my career. So what you see here is salad bars in my schools. And when I got to Berkeley, and I went to Berkeley, where I'm the Director of Nutrition Services for Berkeley Unified School District. I have 16 schools, 9,600 students. We do 8,000 meals a day. I'll do 1.5 million meals this year. Quite a few. You might not, many of you will probably never do that many a year. And we do it when we feed kids. So when I got there to take this job, I wanted to put salad bars in the schools, and they said, "You can't." And I said, "Why?" They said, "Little kids can't eat off of salad bars, and big kids will spit in them," neither of which happens. And you see my kids with salad bars. And Marg was the chef that went in and actually set up every one of these salad bars in all of our schools. So when I went into Berkeley, I had 90 employees in 17 locations. 2 were supposed to be cooks, none could. The only thing in my whole kitchens, all of these kitchens that work, was a can crusher. I'd never even seen a can crusher. I didn't know what it was. Mark didn't either. We went, well, what is this thing, a can crusher? So we had to go in and figure out how we would change what happens with kids' foods. What would a vision be? What would we want kids to know about food and why? And we came up with this idea that what we really needed to do is change their relationship to food. And the first thing I decided we really needed to do is talk about a kind of cuisine that was regional, organic, seasonal, sustainable. So regional food. I think we should be talking a lot about this around here. We're going to talk about it more when I get into this, because so much of the food that we serve in culinary schools and restaurants as well has no regionality, it has no face, it has a high carbon footprint. It's not from anywhere you've ever been. Now, we just flew in from California. You know when you get off a plane, how dry your skin is? You know, you feel yucky. Well, how do you think the lettuce feels, right? When we start to ship this stuff all across the country. When we buy food from local people, we're buying it with food with a face. We're supporting local farmers. We're supporting where we're from. We're supporting people in part of our community. And, oh, by the way, the food tastes good. You will find throughout your careers that by and large, the best food comes from your region. Okay, so that's regional food. Then we go into organic food. Now, many of you probably know this, but organic food just means that it's grown without synthetic pesticides, herbicides, and fertilizers. Doesn't mean it's without chemicals. It's just not synthetic chemicals. Why does this matter? Because pesticides and chemicals make us sick, certainly make our kids sick. And you all are going to be the stewards of this food supply. As chefs, people look up to us about the food they want to eat. Antibiotics in our food supply. Here's a fact I'd like you to remember. There's not going to be that many, but here's one. 70% of all antibiotics consumed in this country are consumed in animal husbandry. That means for every kid and every one of us that gets sick and can't get better, it's often because the the antibiotics have nothing to be able to kill the germs anymore, because there's so much of it. We eat and drink our antibiotics, and most of the antibiotics we eat is in meat, and in beef specifically. Genetically modified organisms. If you don't know about them, you should. They're in everything. 2/3 of all grocery store products are genetically modified. Why do you care? No mandatory testing, no mandatory labeling. We have no idea what's going to happen to our children's children when we have decades of people who have been eating GMOs. Government approves this. The USDA says it's okay. Here's another favorite fact of mine. U.S. agriculture consumes 1.2 billion pounds of pesticides each year. That means if I had a 5-pound bag of flour or sugar here and I ripped it open and poured it on this cutting board, that pile would be what all of us and our children consume every single year through conventional agriculture. Could you imagine taking a spoon and feeding a child pesticides? But we do when we buy conventional agriculture. Now, all this is legal with the USDA, and so is this. The USDA paid for this ad in 1947, 57, one of those years, 46. And it said that DDT was good for you and me. Now, I hope you've all read Rachel Carson and you understand that DDT was never really good for anybody. But the USDA approved it, they put it out there, they said it was fine. You're students, you need to learn these things. The antithesis of that is sustainable food. This is food that's with a triple bottom line: people, profit, planet. Healthy food, healthy earth, healthy kids. This means that restaurants and food service have to be sustainable. They have to be profitable. But people have to matter, and the planet has to matter. And those are things that are really important. When you go out there in the workplace, whether you decide to go to schools or whether you decide to go to restaurants, this stuff is really, really important. And this has something really to do with our lives. In the last 200 years, in less than 200 years, we all, 95% of us used to produce the food that we eat. And now less than 2% of us do. We now live in a country where there's more prisoners than farmers. This statistic is actually wrong. There's now 2.5 3 million prisoners, 1.9 million farmers. It's crazy. It costs $35,000 to $45,000 a year to keep somebody in prison. Not that we should let everybody out, but we should think about why they're all there. Now, all of this has something to do with agribusiness. Companies like Monsanto and DuPont control 90% of the commercially produced seeds. Monsanto and DuPont, who brought us Agent Orange and stain-resistant carpet, now control much of our food supply. This is crazy. 10 companies, 10, control 90% of everything in grocery stores, everything we buy. And this industrialized agriculture mass produces food. Last year in California, 143 million pounds of beef was recalled. 25% of that had already been shipped by the government into schools and was consumed by our children. And the peanut recall, and now the pistachio recall. It's on and on and on. And that with those peanuts, more than 30% had gone into schools in the form of peanut butter. The government is not protecting us, and you guys are all in charge of this, because you'll be feeding people. This is really important. So all this processed food is making our kids sick. In the New York Times, it was reported recently that the average age of kids with kidney stones is 10. 10, my goodness, you know? Why? Because there's too much Gatorade and Powerade and all of those salty drinks in schools and not enough water. And further, the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, has said that of the children born in the year 2000, 1 out of every 3 Caucasians and 1 out of every 2 African Americans and Hispanics will have diabetes in their lifetime, most before they graduate high school. This means that by 2018, we could see 30 or 35% of all school-age kids insulin dependent. It's a travesty. But the CDC went further to say that of those children born in the year 2000, they will be the first generation in our country's history to die at a younger age than their parents. We are feeding children to death. And we are in the throes of a public health time bomb. This statistic is also wrong. I heard yesterday, over 70% of us are overweight or obese. 70%. Diet-related illness is now the #1 cause of preventable death in America. And food makes us fat. Food does, not something else. And big companies are complicit in this. These big companies spend billions of dollars, $20 billion a year, marketing non-nutrient foods to kids. Most children watch 10,000 commercials a year for non-nutrient foods. You know, we now have a generation of children who think chicken nuggets is a food group. What are we going to feed them? Why? And why is this happening? Well, there's so much food, even in this recession, even at a time when there's so many poor and starving people in our country. We produce 3,600 calories for every single one of us. And I run and I ride and I go to the gym every day, and I should be eating less than 2,000. Where are the rest of those calories going? On our hips, or in our belly, or on our thighs. We're consuming way too much. And as chefs and as future culinarians, you guys need to know about this and be responsible for it. How about this? Those 8 fries, whoever ate 8 fries, right? That's a USDA portion. That's what the government says we're supposed to eat. And the supersized one, the one that's bigger than my head, that's what big business tells us to eat. And why? Because the way the USDA commodifies food, we can serve those big plate of fries for as small as the little plate. So the problem around this is the USDA, commodity foods, and processed foods. And that's what we really have to change. And let me tell you something, if we don't change how children are eating, you guys are all going to only be serving chicken nuggets, because what are the consumers going to want in 10 years if they've spent the last 10 years eating nothing but chicken nuggets? So as chefs who want to cook great food, who want to cook interesting food and be creative, we need consumers who are going to eat that way. But there's a whole other piece of that. And that is that this is a social justice issue. And in fact, I think it's a social justice issue of our time. The New York Times also reported, this was about 6 months ago, that the life expectancy between rich Americans and poor Americans has grown 20% in the last 20 years. I mean, that's awful. That means that only rich kids live longer. How terrible is that? But we can change this. All of you can change this. Every single one of you is going to make a difference. Because you've all been here, you're learning about food, you must care about food, and I'm sure you care about other people. Whether you intend to have children, no children, be like me, not really care until something hits you over the head, you'll all make a difference. There's a lot of challenges in this. There's a lot of challenges in changing the system around. And these are actually challenges for the whole industry, but certainly in school food. Food, where are we going to get it? And what's it going to be? Finances, there's not enough money. Facilities, my kitchen when I took over in Berkeley didn't even have a stove. Human resources, those 90 people who didn't know how to cook and only had box cutters and can crushers, because nothing came in if it didn't need a box cutter or a can crusher. And marketing. Now, Berkeley, California, home of Alice Waters, you might think we had good food, but this is the food that we were serving. Grilled cheese sandwiches, Extremo burritos, pizza pockets, chicken nuggets, corn dogs, all allowed by the USDA. My first day of work, I walked in and started crying. It's like, I can't believe we're feeding this to kids. It all came frozen. It all came in boxes. That's what those box cutters were for. It was actually heated in the plastic, served to the kids in the plastic. And then there's the chicken nuggets, this food group. Who invented them anyhow? Well, Tyson did, by the way. And who decided that chicken should be a star, a heart, a whale, a giraffe? Anybody, who decided that? Well, part of the reason why chicken nuggets have become so ubiquitous is because there's not much chicken in those chicken nuggets, and it's cheaper to serve breading than chicken, and so they decided that was a great way to come up with this kids' food, and now kids really want it. But I think we should have real food. I think it should be about sustainable food. This picture is from the Berkeley Farmers Market, where I go every Tuesday and look for the food that we're going to serve the kids. We don't have any processed food in Berkeley. There's no high fructose corn syrup. There's no trans fats. It's all whole grain. We have salad bars in every school. No processed food. Everything made from scratch. It means we cook. Those are actually my hands on that pan. For the first 2 years I was there, I got up every morning at 4 a.m. and went in at 5 and started cooking. And Marg and I would cook. And all we had to cook for these 9,000 kids was 2 double-stack convections that didn't usually work and this tilt skillet. We didn't even have a walk-in when I started. We did put a walk-in in. Then we eventually got a steamer and a soup kettle. And that's how it was for 2.5 years. But we managed to do it. And what this change means, what I'm talking about is changing from chicken nuggets, tater tots, chocolate milk with high fructose corn syrup, and canned fruit cocktail to roast chicken, mashed potatoes or roast potatoes, salad, low-fat organic milk, stuff like that. Stuff like you're actually going to taste today. Real food. It just means making real food. It may not mean making fancy food. It may not be making some chef's dream food, but it's real food. What you see here, I often refer to fondly as my wall of produce. We get 1,200 pounds of raw produce in every other day, and we process it. And that's what it looks like when we process it, whether it's potatoes for mashed or roasted potatoes, or that happens to be cabbage for coleslaw, or whether it's the 30 cases of broccoli, or the 25 cases of cauliflower. That means that we're serving the freshest possible food to our kids, supporting local agriculture, growing palates, and educating children. It means that if we as chefs want to be cooking good food, we have to teach kids what it is. That means they have to eat broccoli. That means they have to eat spinach. That means they have to eat salads. And they have to love it. And the way they're going to love it is if it tastes good. And the way it tastes good is if it's fresh. But that's not enough. We have to market it. Many of you have these on your seats, maybe not all. I didn't know how many people were here, and I'm thankful for that, but we can get you some for the rest. These are my menus. We write those menus in April of every year. We write the menus for the entire year in April. Now, you don't have to go through them right now because you get to take them home with you. But these are our marketing tools. This tells our parents and our kids what we're going to be serving. And not only am I responsible for all the food in all the schools, I'm responsible for all the cooking classes and gardening classes in all the schools. So one of the recipes we're going to do today, and one of the recipes you see here, is what the kids actually cook in the cooking classes. So we teach the kids the food in the cooking classes. They either grow it or taste ingredients in the gardening classes, and we serve it to the kids in the cafeterias. So we have this symbiotic relationship and hands-on experiential learning in cooking and gardening classes, just like you have here. And when you get kids to cook the food, like all of you know, then all of a sudden they really want to eat it. We also produce this Healthy Kids Meal Wheel. This is actually downloadable from my website in English and Spanish. And the idea is to get kids to eat good food. Now, you might notice that the hamburger is teeny because we shouldn't be eating a lot of meat. We should be eating meat kind of as a side, as most traditional cultures do. And then you saw the plethora of plant-based product. This is actually some of my students in one of our gardening classes. They're making a Weedo. This was taken by Time Magazine when they came to look at us. And the kids take the sorrel leaves and wrap it up with flowers and herbs and eat it like a burrito, and they've nicknamed it the Weedo. But this is what happens when you give kids hands-on experiential learning, when you work with the kids. This is one of our cooking classrooms. Now, why is this so important? We now live in a country where 1 out of every 4 meals is eaten in fast food. 1 out of every 4 meals is eaten in a car. 1 out of every 4 meals is eaten in front of a blue screen, an iPhone, an iPod, a computer, a TV. When do we sit and eat? When do we socialize? When do we go out to the restaurants you want to work in? We have to teach these things to kids. And we also have to teach them that this is a full cycle, that composting and recycling is part of the program that we have to have. We have composting and recycling at all of our schools. And I hope that all of you take that, into wherever you work. It's really important. We don't get another chance at a planet. We've messed this one up pretty well, and we need to turn that around. So we actually teach kids about this in all of our schools. This is a picture of the kids in one of the gardens at their farmer's market, the little junior farmer's market, where they trade their food for little things. It's so important to touch kids in this way. I mean, I think it may save their lives, but even if you don't care about that, it will save the restaurants and hotels you work in. Because without the next generation wanting the food you cook, there are no clientele. Now, this takes all kinds of partnerships to make happen. So no matter what area of the industry you go into, you can positively impact how we feed kids. There's a company in California, Full Bloom Baking Company, and they've worked with us for 3.5 years. They've developed product for us that fits our guidelines. They've helped us market our product. And we now have a lot of local companies in California, one of those places I work, that really help us with that. So companies can make a real positive difference. Wellness. 70% of us are overweight. Wellness has to be part of it. We have to have recess. Do you know in New York State, there's no recess anymore. They've cut it out. Crazy, right? And then when there is recess, it needs to be before lunch. But we need kids to get up and walk, run, ride, anything. Because that's another thing that's going to happen. We're not going to be able to eat. Culinary boot camps. Boy, I hope some of you decide that you want to come do this with us. But one of the things we do is we run around the country and do culinary boot camps. We actually try and teach food service workers how to cook basic items because they don't know how to cook anymore. We have a whole generation of people who have no idea how to cook. So we run culinary boot camps for them, to try and really make this a reality for them. We need more time to eat. Most schools give kids 20 minutes to eat. There's no way they can eat in 20 minutes. And oh, by the way, in a lot of schools, because of overcrowding, lunch starts at 9:45 in the morning. Now, you know, lunch does not belong at 9:45 in the morning. That's not lunchtime, right? So these are the kind of struggles that we have in schools. These are the kind of things we go through when we try and decide how to change this. Schools need model wellness policies. As I was walking around here yesterday, I talked to a number of people who are actually teaching business models, business planning. You know, all of that stuff is so important. The financial planning, human resources, all of that plays into how schools run. We're moving to Boulder to take over their school district. I have 150 employees in 50 schools that cover 550 square miles, that feed 28,000 kids. That's a lot of stuff to handle, a lot of people to take care of. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the money of school food. And also I want to hopefully tell you how important understanding numbers and budgets are. None of us are going to be successful unless we can get our arms around the numbers, especially in this economy. School lunch, we taxpayer dollars spend about $8.5 million a year, about $8.5 billion a year to feed 30 million kids a day. It's 54 billion lunches a day, okay? It's a lot of food, a lot of kids, right? That's what we do. And I think that 8 billion needs to be doubled. And people say, how can that happen in this economy? How can we do it? Well, I want to tell you a little bit about this. We are now spending in our country $200 billion a year on diet-related illness. 200 billion. We are still, although it sounds like our president is going to stop this, which would be great, spending $3 billion a week on the war. And so far, we've spent $100 billion in the last 90 days bailing out the auto industry. $8 billion for all children in America for their health sounds like a really small number to me when put in comparison to all that other stuff. But I want to bring it home. The government gives me $2.59 to feed a child a day. Of that $2.59, most school districts are spending 2/3 on payroll and overhead. That means we have less than $1 a day to feed a child. Now, you're all aspiring chefs. If I gave you each $4 and said, go to the grocery store and buy food to cook yourself and 3 friends lunch for those $4, it needs to be delicious, nutritious, be 750 calories, include milk and fruit. Could you do it? Well, probably not. But we need to be able to do that, and that's the number I'm working with. But the way we can do it is really understanding our numbers. So we have tremendous budgeting spreadsheets. We spend a lot of time on this. But I want to tell you one more reason why we need to raise that number. I don't know about all of you, but I know that I sometimes go to Pete's or Starbucks or go to some coffee place. And you know, in San Francisco, a venti latte is $5. That's 5 times more than we spend to feed a child for a day in our country. We now live in a country where many, many, many people spend more on their daily caffeine fix than we spend to feed children for an entire week. Shame on us. We need to change that. And no matter what area of the food service you go into, whether you go into fine dining and work at the French Laundry, whether you go into hotels, whether you go into hospitals, whether you go into cruise ships, we need to care about what we feed people. And what these kids learn about food and their taste and their health will make a difference to all of us. Obama said 2 weeks ago that the thing that's going to crater our economy, even worse than the financial institutions and the auto industry, is health care. And no matter what segment of this industry you go into, it's going to be a problem. A problem for the business, a problem for yourself, and a problem for your families and your children or your nieces and nephews. We have to take care of this. You all have to take care of this. I'm old, you know, I'm almost done. I can't keep doing it that much longer. But what I hope is I inspire you all to think about things a little differently. To think about when you leave here today, hopefully you're not going to fall asleep, I won't have to throw my knife at you or anything. But when you leave here today, when we're done with Q&A, when we're done with all of this, I hope you think, you know what? No matter where I go in my career, I want to do one thing to help kids, to help the next generation, to make this world a little better for the next generation. Because all of us make a difference. We all need to care. And our only road for success is really caring about our team, ourselves, our family, and others. And that really does start with children. It really, really does. And I have a foundation that works on these issues. I also take interns. I take students. I love graduates. And I put up on my Facebook page this morning that I was coming here to talk to all of you, and that I was really, really excited to find there's this double major, culinary and nutrition, and a couple of chefs, one Tony Cipriano, who's just taken over the New Haven School District, said, tell them I'd love graduates, tell them I'd love interns. So there's a lot of jobs out there, there really is. That being said, now we're actually going to make some food, exactly the food we would serve kids. And what we're going to show you is two recipes, Marg and I. One is for oven fried chicken, and one is for, what's it called? Chickpea vegetable curry. The chickpea vegetable curry we actually are serving in the schools, and it actually is a recipe that the kids make. The oven fried chicken recipe is one that was developed at the Ross School. I think it was at the Ross School, and that we've used over and over because we don't serve any fried food. And in fact, I've pulled all the fryers out of our schools. There are no fryers in my life. I know there are plenty here, but I don't have any. But people really like that crispness. People really like that flavor. And so we developed this recipe so that the kids could have something that was really kind of like fried chicken, but without the fry. So there's no fry to this chicken. So what we have here is we have 8-cut chicken. And we get almost all of our chicken from the government. We could have a lot of discussion, and maybe you want to ask me about this, but we could have a lot of discussion about government chicken. But we get 8-cut chicken, and that's what we use in schools. We're one of very few schools in the whole country that is using 8-cut chicken because schools are afraid of chicken. We have now put the fear of God into people that they can't cook chicken. What's all that about? That's why we need to do some training. Anyhow, this recipe is pretty easy. We take the chicken, we cut it up, we marinate it in buttermilk and salt and stuff, and then we make a breading. It's panko crumbs. Pretty easy. Marg's actually going to bread this for me. Panko crumbs, cornmeal. It should be a little coarser cornmeal. This is fine cornmeal. Some flour. We have some pepper, and of course it is fresh ground peppercorns, not the stuff that comes out of the shaker. We could talk more about spices and what they taste like. I think we have some chili powder, cayenne, and salt. So Mark's going to mix this up and bread this while we talk a little bit about salt and dried spices. So the recipe calls for kosher salt, and when I got in the kitchen, I looked at the kosher salt box, and gee, what do you think was on the label? What's in salt? Salt, what else? Anybody read a salt label recently? Anti-caking agents, and this one is yellow prussiate of soda. I said, oh, I don't want to use the kosher salt with the chemicals in it. Let me have some sea salt. I looked for the sea salt. It's got the chemicals in it. Don't want to use, I mean, what's wrong with our country when even salt is something that we have to read the label on? Read labels, know what's in the ingredients. All Morton salt products have this stuff in there so it will pour. Just like that and doesn't get stuck, although even here it gets stuck a little bit. that chemical, if you start to taste for it, and taste these salts plain, you can taste. And as it cooks down in a stock or a soup, if you've ever opened a soup that's been cold and out of the walk-in, and you open it and it's got a little tinny or chemically flavor, or if you taste a stock and it tastes a little chemically, oftentimes it's the bad salt. So we should be using kosher salt or sea salt without chemicals. You know what? We're ingesting enough chemicals in the world without ingesting more chemicals in our salt. So I don't use Morton's. There you go. Now let's talk about the pepper we put in this. Oh, so Mark, what did you just do here?
All I did was mix all the dry ingredients and then toss the chicken from the buttermilk into the dry ingredients. And we set it up on a drying rack so that the breading can actually stick to the chicken. And all we really use, it's not a standing breading procedure, it's just the buttermilk that'll hold the breading onto the chicken. And we usually bread it and let it sit overnight in the walk-in so that it totally dries out, so that when it goes into the convection oven, it actually gives you that crispy, coaty texture. And I've done it with chicken, pork chops, fish, all kinds of different things without adding any more fat into it.
So this is great because there's no added fat. The key is unwrapped in the walk-in overnight. I know all the reasons why you shouldn't do that. What we do in Berkeley is we just take and we put it on. We do 1,500 pounds of chicken once a week. When we do this type of chicken, you can only imagine how much handwork this is, but the kids really like it, so we do it once a week. We do that. It's 88 sheet pan racks. We take it and first, this is a 7-day process for us. Chicken is a 7-day process. It comes in frozen on Thursday. We take it, it goes into the walk-in. On Friday, we take it out of the boxes and put it on big Metro shelves in big pans, put it in the walk-in to defrost over the weekend. On Monday, we take it out of the walk-in, and we sort it by kind because, of course, chicken doesn't all cook in the same, at the same time. So the breasts and the legs, everything's separate, and we marinate it on Monday overnight, separated in the buttermilk. And Tuesday morning, we bread it, and we put it in the walk-ins Tuesday night. And on Wednesday, we par cook it so it's nice and crisp. And when it goes in the walk-ins, it goes in on sheet pan racks, unwrapped, with a sheet pan cover over it. And you know, we have the 5 racks. It goes in the walk-in. Wednesday it's par cooked. Thursday morning it goes out to the sites to be finished. It's the preparation you're going to taste today. Now you have little drumettes, which is a little different because there's going to be a lot more breading per chicken. But it's actually a pretty healthy recipe. It meets all of our fat and stuff guidelines as part of a full meal. And we're going to put this in the oven just for grins. But you won't see the real crispiness of it because it hasn't been overnight. Now, before we start the next recipe, I want to talk about the pepper. So I had these great prep cooks helping me. And, you know, first I pick up the salt, and I don't want to use that. And you know, so then I find some good salt. Now this is a little expensive. I'm not saying we would ever use this really lovely sea salt in the schools, but you can use kosher salt without chemicals. Then I asked for pepper, and somebody handed me that pepper that comes out of those 1-pound things. And the first thing I did was smell it. And I said, oh, this isn't fresh ground pepper, right? No, of course not. It comes out of those things. So I said, somebody go, you know, let's get some peppercorns, let's toast them, let's grind them, let's use it. If you haven't done this in your classes, I want you to all do this. I want you to do a couple of things. I want you to take the regular salt that comes out of the box and then some salt without the chemicals and taste the two so that you know that there's actually a difference. And I want you to take the pepper that comes out of the containers and smell it and taste it. You'll often find it's really chalky and astringent. Then take some peppercorns, toast them, grind them, smell them. Huge smell. Taste it. It tastes nutty. It tastes good. It tastes like an ingredient. Whether you're cooking for kids with $1.40 food cost per lunch, which is what I have to live with, or whether you're cooking at some place where you've got a $20 food cost for dinner, you need to know what things taste like. And this is really important. We're going to talk more about this when we talk about the produce we have here. Mark, can you cut me up some potatoes here?
Absolutely.
So when we got here, we were looking for our ingredients, and there's some errant ingredients. We were looking for our ingredients, and some of the students were already cutting it, and that was really great. But we looked at some of this stuff and we tasted it, and so I put a carrot in my mouth. I tasted it. Now, the best time of year to eat carrots is now. Well, this carrot kind of tastes really lousy. In fact, it tastes a lot worse than lousy, but we're in mixed company, so I won't tell you how bad I thought it was. So, and then when I was in the storm yesterday, I saw these carrots that were as big as my head that came from Canada. Well, you know what? Maybe if it's all about flavor, we would find something else. But I don't know how many of you have just tasted a carrot recently, tasted a really good carrot, which they're always sweeter in the winter because it's cold, and then tasted again something commercial. So the carrots weren't that great. We also had some greens that weren't very good. And so again, no matter where you're going to end up, you got to taste everything. You really have to taste it. Salt makes a difference. Pepper makes a difference. A carrot, whether it's good or not, makes a difference. And we shouldn't be cooking with stuff if it doesn't taste good, right? I mean, why? We're chefs. We got to care about the food. All right, so this little recipe here is really one that the kids cook. And you might not think that kids are going to eat a stew with curry, but they do. Why? Because they get to make it. And it's really, I'm sauteing and I don't hear that saute sound. No.
Just starting now.
All right, my bad. Oops. Some chef would have marked me off for that, right? So the kids actually make this in the classrooms, and they really love it and they really eat it. Now, one of the things that I think is really important, and I don't think we learn enough of in culinary schools, no matter where you are, is seasonality. This recipe is our April recipe, and what's in it? Root vegetables and winter greens. Why? Because root vegetables and winter greens are what we have in California in April, and clearly what you would have here as well. So that's why this recipe has these items in it. So let's see, what are we adding here?
Leeks first.
Here, you.
Okay.
You do.
You do.
Yeah, you do it. So I want to talk to you about these garbanzo beans. When I got here, the garbanzo beans were soaking in water. We cook all of our beans, garbanzo beans, black beans, pinto beans, all of our beans. We cook them from scratch. We don't ever soak them. Why do we soak them? Well, the reason people started soaking them is they cook quicker. Do we really care? To my palate, and you guys can do this test yourself, the garbanzo beans, the pinto beans, everything is better when it cooks longer and slower. And unless we're in a place where the fossil fuel usage of the gas is going to make that much of a difference, then you'll get a better flavor, you'll get a creamier product. Just don't soak them, and part of the nutrients go into the water that you throw away. So what we do, we don't soak them. We start them in a pot, a lot of water, bring them to a boil, turn them down to a simmer, skim them, and they're done. Now, not all dried beans are the same. Here's the thing. Dried beans don't need to be 10 years old when you buy them, right? So if you get dried beans that are only dried, 6 months, they'll cook in 4 hours. If you get dried beans, or 5 hours maybe, if you get dried beans that are 2 years old, they'll never cook, they'll take a really long time, and they'll all be different textures after you do cook them. So it's important to know your product and not think that just because it's a dried bean, you don't need to care where it comes from, when it was produced, when it was dried, and who grew it. So these actually were soaked. They cooked very, very quickly, and they're okay, but they're not great. And you'll taste them when you taste this stuff. All right, so we started with leeks and ginger and curry powder, and then we added
And I added the the carrots, and then the white potatoes, and now the sweet potatoes because they're cooked on.
Okay, cool. And then we're going to add these garbanzo beans that are, okay. And we have our chicken that's sort of cooking in the oven. Now, our cooking classes have about 18 kids in them, just like the classes here. But we will have a teacher for every 6 kids. In our cooking classes, the kids actually have knives. We're not phobic about kids having knives. We don't give them French knives, you know, we give them little knives. We give them knives. They actually cook just like this, usually on the little cassette burners. Oh, and now we're going to add a little water.
Did you talk about the liquid?
Oh, yeah. So, one of the other things that happened yesterday with somebody who was helping us is when the beans were done cooking, they threw away the water. And we would not do that. We would save the water and use the liquid back in the stew. We never throw away the liquid from actually cooking anything. And in fact, we'll even use pasta water that we've cooked to make cream soups and stuff. So we really try and use absolutely everything. We try and use the natural starches that cook in or out of things to make something out. Another thing about beans is people say you can't salt them. It's not true. You can salt beans. It's not a problem. We usually cook them halfway through before we start salting, but it's not about salt. When people tell you the beans don't cook, it's often about acid, so we don't put any acid in until the very end. But salt, you can start usually salting about halfway through. But don't throw liquids away if you don't need to. They can be used in something else easily. Okay, so what if we start, we're gonna have some tasting in about 10, 15 minutes. What? Well, we're gonna have a tasting whenever the chef says, because I always do what the chef says. Actually, I almost never do what anybody says. How about some questions? Yes, sir.
One of the reasons that I soak to start, specifically with beans, is the undigestible sugars that sometimes cause gas in people that eat them. How do you compensate for that when you're using specifically beans?
One of the things that I believe most people will find is if they eat beans on a regular basis, that our bodies get used to digesting all of that stuff, and it's not a problem. I think it mostly happens for people that almost never eat beans. One of the things I also think is that when we talk about how to eat more affordably and sustainably and actually healthfully, we would actually eat more whole grains and beans. And if we do that, our bodies get a little bit more used to digesting them. Listen, nobody wants to be told what to do, right? You guys don't want to be, I certainly don't want to be, and especially around food. So one of the first things that happened when Marg and I went in is I saw them making these nachos, and they were taking these really bad chips and they were pouring some orange stuff that came out of a can on top, and then taking some jalapenos and throwing them on top, and this is what they fed the kids for lunch. I saw it and took it away. And then we had an entire middle school who said, we're not going to eat anymore because of this. And Marg and I, and Marg did a lot of work on this. We found a really good chip. It had flax seeds. It was baked. It had no trans fats. We came up with our own kind of deconstructed nacho that we serve in the schools now. And so we really worked with the kids. Another thing that happened at the Ross School is the third graders, my second month at the schools, came up and it was all girls in the class at that time. They came up and sat down in front of me and said, Miss Cooper, we're on strike. I wanted to cheer, you know. I mean, here's these third graders who like want to go on a hunger strike because they don't like what I'm feeding them. I mean, I wanted to applaud, but I didn't think that that's exactly what they wanted. So I said, what's the matter? We hate your grilled cheese sandwich. How come you don't know how to make grilled cheese? We thought you were a chef. I said, well, what kind of grilled cheese sandwich you want? Well, just like, our moms make. And I said, what's that? Wonder Bread and American cheese. Well, there was no Wonder Bread or American cheese. And so we actually worked with the kids, and we actually baked bread with them to get a whole grain bread that they would like. We did tastings till we found a cheddar cheese, because American cheese, of course, is not cheese, that they would like. And we started making it with them. And over time, So over time, the kids liked it. So then the next year, the beginning of the next year, these now fourth graders were with the third graders, or fifth with fourth, whatever, walking in, and one of my managers said, "Hey, chef, guess what I just heard?" And I said, "What?" She said, the fifth graders that were bringing the littler kids in just said to them, "Oh, you guys are so lucky you're coming now. We fixed all the food." So really, that's kind of a long story, but it's really about working with kids and getting them to think about food and taste food, and that's what really makes a difference. Yes?
How do you deal with severe allergies?
Yeah, good question. You know what, I'd like to talk here. The question was about allergies. First of all, I believe that part of the reason we see so many peanut allergies and so many wheat allergies is because of the chemicals in our food supply. I think our immune systems have been broken down by all the stuff that's in our food, and I think that that's part of it. That being said, we are peanut free in all elementary schools. In middle and high school, everything is well labeled. And so with the little kids, we protect them, and the older kids, we educate them. Yes? We do work with families. A couple of things happen. We have teaching programs for families in all of our schools. Maybe not in all of our schools right now, but in at least 10 schools we have cooking classes for families. And also we do a lot of marketing and outreach. I go to PTA meetings, I go to teacher meetings. We've made DVDs, we've put out the menu. So we do a lot of work with families as well. We as the culinary team or the food service team don't do intervention with students. The question was, do we do intervention? It's really not our place to do intervention. What we do is we go to the administration. Some of our schools have nurses. Certainly they all have some kind of social services around kids. Some actually have, like our high school has a whole medical clinic. And we would go to them and talk to, tell them that there's a kid that there's a problem with. But we ourselves don't do intervention. And I'm not trained to do that. In our schools, we do universal breakfast. Every single child is fed breakfast every single day, free in the classroom.
And do you also manage the breakfast?
Yes.
Also?
I manage breakfast, lunch, and snack in all of our schools.
So what would be a typical breakfast that you would serve the children?
We have a 2-week rotating cycle. It's different than in elementary and middle schools, but in elementary schools, 1 day a week is granola and yogurt. There's always fruit. We serve organic bulk milk at lunch, but we do serve cartons at breakfast. There's another day that's organic cereal. There's one day that's a whole grain bagel with cheese and fruit. One day there's a baked product. So it's a rotating menu like that, and it's a 2-week cycle. Right? This is a question about the parents, and I think that this is something that we're all going to really have to take on and think about. We do outreach. I go to all the PTA meetings. We have cooking classes for the parents in 10 schools. But one of the things that we found, I'm at an age where I'm old enough to know this, but when the government wanted us to stop smoking and start wearing seatbelts, both of those things, they marketed that to kids. They didn't market that to the adults. And I think that, one of the things we see is that what the kids learn in school, they take home. I thought my avocation was going to be ski bum. The question was, how did I get into culinary and why CIA? It was 1973. I'd just been thrown out of high school for behaving badly and needed a career choice. And I decided my career choice was going to be ski bum, and I hitchhiked out to Telluride, Colorado, and decided I was going to be a ski bum. I called home for my parents to send me money because that's what I thought you did. And my parents literally looked at the phone and went click, you know? And so I needed to get a job. I'd never had a job. I'd never cooked. So I talked my way into an assistant breakfast cook position and fell in love with food. I fell in love with the giving of food, the tasting of food, the socialization around food, and I fell in love with it. And in 1976, a few years later, I had back-to-back hang gliding and skiing accidents, broke my legs, and thought, oh, there's going to probably need to be a career after ski bum, because you can't do it forever. I didn't realize it till after that. And at the time, I was asking around where I should go to culinary school, because in those ensuing years, I'd started my own baking company, started cooking in restaurants, doing a lot of stuff. And at that point, people said, go to CIA. I applied to CIA and was immediately rejected because I didn't have a high school diploma. So I went back and got my GED and took SATs and eventually got in and graduated in '79. So that's my road to the culinary world. The question is, how do we control the portion size on the salad bar? We basically don't. Mark, do you want to talk a little bit about the salad bars?
The salad bars were a really interesting project for us. Like Ann said earlier, everybody thought that the little kids wouldn't eat the salad bars. And I found that to be the complete opposite. The middle school kids and the high school kids were interested in salad bars. So the first thing we did was we did a salad bar, an all organic salad bar in the high school. So every ingredient on the salad bar was organic, which was really great. Walk through the line, give you half your salad made for you. But in the elementary schools, we went in and put these salad bars in. And I designed what I thought made the most sense. So we did, a couple different proteins, both a meat protein and then a vegetable-based protein, meat, cheeses, and things like that. And we set the salad bars up with the intention that I went in for the first 3 weeks and worked with the kitchen staff. We decided how much stuff we were going to order. I taught knife cuts because the people that work for us in the school districts don't even know how to use a knife. So to be able to process the food, we first started off by buying sliced vegetables to help them out. And then we went on to actually having them do their own knife cuts and stuff like that. When we set the salad bars up, what we noticed with the little kids, like the kindergarten kids, because they're little, they barely can see over the salad bar. But they walked in and they were like, wow, this is like going out to dinner with my mom and dad. This is great. I'm going to take all this stuff. So for the first month of salad bars in all the schools, they were going 10 times the amount of bars for the other ones because the kids were taking so much. And what happened was we wasn't take as much lettuce and fresh vegetables and things that they could have. And I taught them a little rhyme, which was that if you're going to have a salad for lunch, you need to pick one protein and 5 other things for the salad bar. So you could have as much lettuce and as much of the other things as you wanted, but you had to have one protein. Because we would have kids that would have just like, a plate of cottage cheese or whatever. So to teach them to build this salad, it really caught on quickly. And what we found was that it was a really nice alternative. Everything was really how to do that. They're vegetarian most of the time, some of the time, know a lot about salads. They're all connected to gardening classes and stuff like that. So the salad bars ended up being a huge success. And probably the trickiest part for us was maintaining the salad bars and keeping them at the level that we wanted them to be. We wanted them to be fresh. We wanted them to be organized. I actually did a graph so that if you looked at my graph and you went in and you were a sub for the day, you could set the salad bar up just from the graph itself. So things were in the Cambro containers, like different sizes and stuff, depending on what was used. But we ended up doing really well with the salad bars. And even today, they're modified a little bit depending on what's in season. But besides that, they've been very, very successful for us.
I got to tell you, this is the hardest job I have. And we spend a tremendous amount of time. One of the things that we do is we have food service software. We actually track everything we buy by item, so we know what's happening with food costs. We only buy things in season. If it's not in season, from a produce standpoint, I don't serve it, which means the price is the least it's going to be. So we don't actually, I'm in California, but on our salad bars, there's no tomatoes, there's no peppers, there's no cucumbers. We just don't have them because they're not in season, even in California. And so there's that balance around organic versus natural. There's a website, the Pesticide Action Network, and they have something called the Dirty Dozen. And it's the most pesticide, chemically laden produce that there is. Some of them are green beans, strawberries, and apples. So we would only buy those that are organic or IPM, integrated pest management. And then there are others, especially ones that kids don't eat so much of, that we think is less important. So we try and balance it that way. Organic milk, absolutely. Organic and hormone and antibiotic-free milk, I think, is really important. That's all we serve. If we have apple juice, it's really important because kids often consume a lot of it. It may be, and it's really important on hormones and antibiotics. We only serve hamburgers once every other month in our elementary schools, and hot dogs once every other month, because we serve hormone and antibiotic-free grass-finished, and it's really expensive, so I serve it less often. So that's how we balance it. Someone over here, did I see your hand? Yes?
How do you recommend the rest of the food industry get involved with the organic movement and the slow food movement because of it's not really cost effective to buy in bulk?
You know, I want to go back to sustainability, triple bottom line, people, planet, profit. We cannot afford to have a planet of sick people. Our businesses can't afford to have a planet of sick people. So at some point, we all need to take a stand, and business needs to take a stand, and I think they're starting to. I think we're starting to see businesses who will say, you know, we will, you know, balance that. And I think that that's where we're going. A lot of chefs I know, whether they're into slow food or they're into sustainability, but a business can be really profitable and take care of the planet and take care of its people. And I think that that's what we're going to have to do. The alternative is going to be that the healthcare is going to bankrupt the businesses anyhow. So I think that that's what's going to lead us down that path. If it's not our soul, I think it's our pocketbook's going to lead us there anyhow. Listen, with all of this stuff, we're going to pay now or pay later. We're either going to get people to eat good food, or the healthcare system is going to take all our money.
The people that are going to go to TGIF Fridays are always going to go there. You're not going to change that. You know, but what you can change are the people that are interested in sustainable food and healthy food and organic food and local food in season. And those are the people, as a chef, and as somebody that's been very, very passionate. I live in a little town called Point Reyes Station in California, and pretty much we eat within our local food shed from like 150 miles. And so we just eat things, and the people that live there, everybody eats like that. There's not fast food for 30 miles. We love that. Like the fastest food there is a crappy pizza. So I think that inevitably you're never going to change that profiling into somebody for people that are going to go to Mickey D's or to TGI Fridays. But what you want them to do is embrace the fact that you are serving, you know, farm to the table food. And people are really starting to catch on. And if you continue to read and see the stuff that's going on in the industry, more and more people are talking about it. More and more chefs, even if their whole menu isn't organic or local or sustainable, pieces of it are. You know, 10 years ago, it was almost unheard of to find an organic, local, sustainable restaurant in the country.
I want to expound on that a little bit. Here's what I think. I think that all of us in this economy think our money's more dear. I think we all care about where we spend. I know for myself, and I think I'm of a market, a part of a market, that when I go out to eat, I'm going to choose that kind of restaurant because I think that that's what's important. And I think more and more people are thinking this is what's important. If you guys follow the news on any of the listservs, if you go to websites, if you go to mine, if you sign up for people's blogs, you're reading more and more and more about this. I mean, in the New York Times, there's been 6 articles in the last 2 weeks about sustainable food and local food and what's important. And I think that it's now a selling point and a marketing point. So I think you do it and you market it, and I think it can make a difference. So the question was dressings on the salad bar. We actually have had a lot of thought put into this. First of all, we actually have an organic company, Organicville, who produces our dressings. They're all vegan, so there's no trans fats in them. So we start with that. It makes it a little healthier. We put in our schools all our dressings in squeeze bottles with a little hole. And so we have kind of taught the kids that they can't just dump it on. They're actually not allowed, and who knew this would have been the case, but we did find this to be the case. They're not allowed to put ranch dressing on their pizza or anything else except their salad. And so we try and get the best dressing we can without saturated fats, without trans fats, in the lowest calorie count, and then give them squeeze bottles so they can't put too much on. Yes? You know, there really wasn't. We really work with the kids. I mean, there's part of what happens when you do this is you have to be in the cafeterias and talking to kids. And one of the things we did pretty early on was plate waste studies. We actually did a study with the UC Center for Berkeley Weight and Health. They did plate waste studies and stuff like that. And, you know, just in the very beginning, sometimes we saw some waste, but right away we talked to the kids. We did the plate waste studies. We talked to them about composting and garbage and trash and recycling, which they all really kind of know about, and it sort of takes care of itself.
Did you worry about the calorie intake at all?
No, you know, we really didn't on the salads. Like I said, the dressings are pretty low calorie, and we didn't have a lot of animal protein on there anyhow, so we really felt like, you know, it's hard to eat too much rice and beans and lettuce, so. You know, the question really is, you know, since Berkeley was the start, how does this movement become replicable nationwide? I first want to say, I want to remind you how bad the food was. I mean, the food was spectacularly bad and in Berkeley. So you might think that it was going to be good. It really wasn't. This was not an easy transition. We worked very hard. We've been beat up along the way. But one of the things that wasn't as hard as it is in other places is the local food piece. You know, I started in school food in New York, and I spent 9 years as the executive chef of the Putney Inn. And in both places, I served regional food. I think of this in a number of ways. First of all, I think of it as concentric circles, that you have to start somewhere. And if your circle's as big as this room, you got to start somewhere. So let's just say, I'm not going to, and this is the first thing I did when I went into Boulder, we are not going to buy anything from another country, period, except for maybe chocolate and coffee and tea, because how could we not have those? But we're going to start with that. And this was hard. We had hundreds and hundreds of cases of mandarin oranges from China. We had apples from China. We had all this stuff from everywhere. So I said, the first way we're going to get local is not buy anything from another country, that we don't have to. If it's produced in this country, we'll start with that. Then I said, let's see if we can bring it in within 500 miles. Can we bring it in within 1,000 miles? Does that concentric circles have to change depending upon when you are in the season? And what does it look like when you say you're going to be seasonal? At the Ross School, all winter long, we served root vegetables, winter greens, some little amount of broccoli that was being grown for us in Florida. We served some East Coast fruit, mostly apples, but some citrus from Florida. And that's what we did in the wintertime. Although, all summer long, we bought as much as we could from the local farmers, usually about 4 tons, 8,000 pounds a year, and processed it and froze it, so we had that to serve year-round. The Boulder model will be similar. As we start down this process, we will have 4 different salad bar menus as we go through the year. We will do a lot of root vegetables, we'll do a lot of greens, and we'll find farmers who can try and extend the seasons. So I think it is replicable everywhere. You just have to be committed to that seasonality. And frankly, the food tastes best that way. You know, it really, really does. I think what we're seeing, the question is really, you know, what's happening in school food. I mean, a lot of schools do have McDonald's and Kentucky Fried and Pizza Hut as their school vendors. This is just crazy, but that's actually what's happening. I think that there's a tremendous movement now all across the country to change. So we in Berkeley had an executive chef. We will have one in Boulder. LA has one. Baltimore has one, New Haven has one, San Diego has one. We're seeing, Oregon, Washington, We're seeing a tremendous amount of interest in changing this. And going back to how I started, these executive chefs are making real executive chef money. They get full benefits. They get 50 paid days off a year. They don't work nights, weekends, or holidays. And they're doing really some pretty good food. We're seeing there's not a day goes by now that there is not some article, TV show, news story about kids and school and food. I think the obesity crisis is part of what's pushing this, but I think people are honestly starting to really care about these issues. If you're interested in it, you can sign up for my blog, you can follow me on Twitter or Facebook, you can and you'll see how much of this is going on. And so it's pretty interesting. The garden and cooking program were actually in place when I got there. We just expanded it. And no, the question was, how did you fit these in? We didn't. The school district, the superintendent and school board said this was important, so it became part of the school day. There are some classes that, in some schools, where it's after-school programs, but by and large, it's been fit into the school day by making it part of the academic curriculum. So that in cooking and gardening, you can be learning math or science or things like that. So it's just, and there's a whole program that was developed by the Center for Eco-Literacy, and also one that was developed here on the East Coast by Columbia Teachers College that fits the cooking and gardening classes into the state guidelines, the federal guidelines. So it becomes part of the educational day. So how long should lunch be and what time? I really think lunch should be 40 minutes, but honestly, most of the schools are doing 30 now, but at least 30 is better than 20. Our earliest lunch starts at 11:15, and most of our lunches start around 11:15, but we do have one school that starts at 11:15. Most start at 11:15 or 11:30. They usually run for an hour and a half, depending on how big the school is and how many lunch periods that they have. So the question is, how do you deal with the whole equipment issue? What we did, my central kitchen really was a room a quarter of the size of this room when I got there. 2 double-stack convections, teeny walk-in, no real walk-in. The teeny walk-in was 150 years old, a tilt skillet, and a soup kettle that didn't work, and so we went from there. Eventually, and this had actually happened before I came, the school district had passed a bond, and we built a central kitchen. And it's a lovely, lovely central kitchen. Most schools I go into now, most districts, we go to, in Boulder, we're going to start with 4 regionals, and we're refurbishing 4 existing kitchens. But I really think centralized cooking, cook-chill operations is the way to go for schools. And so any of you who are interested in that, that's another thing that I think we really need to do. And also there's a whole value-added component. So even though everything's cooked from scratch, we don't cook it all. One of the things we do is find companies who can produce for us. So I told you about our organic dressing company. All of our Mexican food is cooked for us by a small Hispanic woman-owned company that I found at a farmer's market. And this small company was just selling at farmer's markets, and I loved their product. So we talked to them about the ingredients and the cost and what they needed to do, and they started producing for us. And now what it means for this company, since most farmers markets are in the summer, is 12 employees now work year-round because we've given them that business. We use Full Bloom Baking Company for a lot of products. So we are looking for companies, and I'm looking for this in Boulder now as well, who can make us a value-added product that can fit our profile, that can fit our finances, and come in and work in schools. So we do both. We try and build the kitchens, and we try and find companies to partner with us. This woman is allergic to citrus, and do we actually produce labels for everything we do? We are not doing that in Berkeley, but we are doing that in Boulder, and what we are doing is having the ingredients for all of the items up on a website. So we're actually having the ingredient label, just like you would see on any packaged food, available for the parents on a website. We're setting it up by menu and then alphabetical order, so a parent can go in and research an item, or they can click on the menu and be kicked over to what the nutritionals are. It's a tremendous amount of work to keep these databases up like that, but we're getting those requests more and more often. USDA Commodity Food Program. This is really kind of interesting if you're a nerd about this stuff. I will tell you that The USDA Commodity Food Program right now is being investigated by the New York Times, and I spent a day last week with a writer who's actually going to be writing about this. Here's how this works. It's really complicated. We could spend a whole afternoon on this, but we are kind of winding down here. Our tax dollars, if you follow the Farm Bill at all, our tax dollars spend about $50 billion a year on commodity foods. And what this means is the government will buy up product to prop up agricultural prices. This recently happened with Tyson and Pilgrim Pride. Now, you might not think that Tyson needs to be propped up by the government, considering how profitable they are, but they just did get a $125 million buyout by the government to buy chicken and send it into schools. So the government buys this product. Now, the product never changes hands. The product is at Tyson. This is a crazy story. So Tyson tells the government, oh, sales are bad, you gotta help. The government said, okay, we'll buy the chicken. We'll buy $125 million worth of chicken. Now, the chicken's sort of virtual chicken. We don't even know whether the chicken exists. Now, since most schools can't cook chicken because they think that it's gonna kill somebody to cook it, they say, well, what we need is chicken nuggets. So schools get together as co-ops and order the chicken nuggets from Tyson. So now the government says to the schools, you have 19 cents per kid to spend on, we will give you 19 cents per kid to spend on commodity foods. So the schools go to Tyson and go, I want my 19 cents to go to chicken nuggets, and please send me $100,000 worth. Now, so far, there's no chicken. The government buys the chicken, and then the school tells Tyson they want the chicken. Tyson says, great, I absolutely want to give you the chicken. I'm going to charge you $1.10 a pound to process the chicken that the government gave me to make you the chicken that I actually sold to the government first, back to you. So the schools then spend anywhere from $1 to $1.25 a pound paying Tyson to make the chicken that they could have got for free from the government into chicken nuggets. So they send it into their business, because then they don't need chefs, they don't need culinarians, they don't have to worry about food safety and sanitation. They can take their box cutters, they can open those cases, they can dump those chicken nuggets onto a tray and feed the kids. Tyson sells it to the government gives it free to the schools buy it back from Tyson. This is a crazy, crazy thing. And I'm not picking on Tyson. This is Pilgrim's Pride. This is all the big companies that have, oh, look at how lovely that is. This is all the big companies that deal with commodities. And this goes further. Can I have this? So with the commodities, another thing that happens is that our commodity dollars support corn and soy. And it's not corn or soy that we eat necessarily. It's corn or soy that goes into hamburgers and, in the case of corn, high fructose corn syrup and soda. It's why there are 99-cent double hamburgers and 29-cent big gulp sodas. It's because we spend so much money of our taxpayer money supporting corn and soy instead of broccoli and cauliflower. Nobody eats it. There's no need for it. But it becomes ubiquitous and it goes into all the foods we eat. So if you go to the grocery store and try and find a hamburger roll, a hot dog, or ketchup without high fructose corn syrup, you will have to look all day. And who thought that we have to have high fructose corn syrup and all these things? The reason we have high fructose corn syrup and trans fats in so many items is it's so cheap because of the way it's commodified, and it becomes this really cheap ingredient that goes into product. So we finally do have chicken that's at the chefs told me temperature of 165. I will tell you that we don't cook it to 165 in our schools, but I did what the chef said here. So we have our little chicken. We would not serve in a fancy bowl like this, but we would absolutely serve this as a meal in our schools. And yes, the kids do eat it. For the elementary school kids, they would get one thigh. For the high school, middle school kids, they might get a thigh and a leg. They might get half a breast and a wing, something like that. They would get this, plus salad bar, fresh fruit in season, and organic non-fat milk. I want to talk about chocolate milk for a minute. In my world, chocolate milk is soda in drag, and we've banned it. We banned it in Berkeley, we're banning it in Boulder. As far as I'm concerned, it should be banned in every school in America. And I'll tell you why. Chocolate milk, soda in drag, low-fat milk without sugar added, because many cheap milk products have added sugar if you read the label. But non-fat milk is about 110 calories for 8 ounces. Chocolate and strawberry can be anywhere from 140 to 180. 180. Most of them are 50%, 40 to 50% more calories in chocolate milk than in regular white milk. What does this mean? If your child, if my child, if any child goes to school and chooses chocolate milk over white milk every day, just even if they only do it once a day, never mind twice, if they do it once a day for the 180 school days of a year, they will consume 6.5 pounds, 6.5 pounds, more than the 5-pound bag, of additional unneeded sugar every year. And go ahead and do that for the 12 years of school and see how much of an obesity crisis and diabetes crisis we have in this country. We've got to stop teaching kids that everything is sweet. This whole craze around sweet water. If you guys follow what's going on at all now, and you're reading about the Child Nutrition Reauthorization, you'll see something called the Clinton Foundation's Alliance for a Healthy Generation. They're working with the American Beverage Association. So we've got Clinton's Foundation, and we got the American Beverage Foundation, American Beverage Association, which is Coke and Pepsi. They've come together to come up with a deal, not a great deal as far as I'm concerned, I'm totally against it, where schools will allow beverages of up to 66 calories throughout all grade levels, any beverage. That means we're going to have sugar water, whatever kind of sugar water it is, all through schools, and we will now be teaching an entire generation of children that water, which makes up 1/3 of our bodies and we can't live without, should be sweet. It's crazy. It's really crazy. Yes. I've heard a lot of crazy stuff about this milk business. Here's a crazy milk thing for you, and if you don't believe me, go ahead and research this, and I hope you do. And I see everybody's a little fidgety, so I'm going to let you out of here soon, so don't worry. You're not going to have to sit much longer. The government allows an acceptable amount of blood in milk, and that acceptable amount actually can color the milk. So at the top end of that acceptable amount of milk with blood, it goes into flavored milks because you can't see the color. And this is our tax dollars at work, everyone. The dairy lobby has a tremendous amount of money, and that's why, you know, we talked a little bit about what's going on with allergies. How many people in this room are lactose intolerant? It's about 1/3 of all Americans. The USDA says that in every school lunch, I will only get reimbursed if I serve milk. At every school breakfast, I will only be reimbursed if I serve milk. Soy milk, almond milk, any other beverage is not allowed. Why? Because our health? No. Because the dairy lobby is so strong that they got it into the guidelines that says we have to serve milk at every meal. So these are all things you guys could be learning about and really thinking about, because it's really, you know, it's really important to understand this stuff. I want to leave you with a couple of things, and then I'll be happy to answer more questions. But so the USDA, you heard I don't love what they're doing. I really think that they're complicit in this. I think that there's no way a governmental entity can be supporting agribusiness, taking care of our children, and oh, by the way, overseeing the National Organic Program. There's way too much conflict of interest. If this is something that interests you, there's plenty of research you can do on it. I think, and it may not happen, you know, in my lifetime, but maybe in yours, that we need to take oversight of the National School Lunch Program away from the USDA and put it under the Health and Human Services, or CDC. I think we need to make people understand the symbiotic relationship between food and health. As chefs, we know how important delicious is. We know how important looking at something is. But the other thing that's really important is that we are what we eat. Food and health are very, very, very intrinsically combined. I think we have to understand that. And so I think we really need to put school lunch under another agency, see food as a health initiative. And I think that that will help us a lot. And I hope we can see that. And I also hope that we can see universal meals. We talked about universal breakfast. I would like to feed every kid every day in America. I think it should be a birthright that every child that goes to school should have a healthy, delicious meal while they're there. They can learn, they can think, they'll be the best they can be. And given that this is social justice, such a social justice issue, I think it's the moral imperative of our time to really do something about this. And I think all of you who are the next generation of culinarians really should be working on this. Okay, bottled water. Throw it away. Let's not have any. I'm really against bottled water. We've taken it out of all of our schools. We don't have bottled water. We have big dispensing things. Why no bottled water? Well, first of all, the amount of plastic it takes and fossil fuels to make the bottles is tremendous. The idea that we would be moving water from Fiji to America to drink is maybe one of the most absurd things I've ever heard. And okay, gas isn't so pricey right now, but it's been and will go back. And if you believe, as I do, that part of the reason we've been in this war for going on 7 years is over, you know, fossil fuels and who has them and who doesn't, then how can we even consider shipping water all over the globe? Additionally, most municipalities have huge guidelines around the city or the states or the town or the county's water supply. You know, there's lots of rules. Do you know there's not one rule around bottled water? You could go to the tap out back here, fill up some bottles, label it, you know, Johnson & Wales Best, and without anything else except the name on it, without any testing, without any monitoring, you could go on and sell it. So when people say bottled water is better, it's not necessarily so. Now, are there some kinds of mineral water? Yeah, whatever. But for most of us, we should be drinking our water out of reusable containers. We should get away from plastic. We should go to metal or glass, and that's how we should be consuming water. And teaching kids that water out of the faucet is fine, and bottled water with 66 calories worth of sugar is not. So, anything else? All right, thank you.
Now, we have 156 DVCs before Chef Cooper, and there's some amazing people in here. Paul Bocuse, Joel Robuchon, Emma Lagasse, some of you know, Martin Yan. And most of them have come in here and dazzled students with recipes. It's the first time I've actually seen somebody come in and dazzle students with information. And you know, I have to commend you because it was tremendous. I sat that back door there, and some of the things you talked about was amazing. What I really enjoyed today was how your students got involved, because I'm always a little nervous about this, especially when we talk about how the students are going to get involved and ask questions.
Yeah.
And it was tremendous. I really applaud you because you really did ask some terrific questions, and it was great. So, good job on yourself. This was not about cooking food today. This was about a message, and I hope you realized that. I hope you got that message, and I think it was worthwhile. You know, I think it was great, and I thank you for giving the time to come in. And
Marguerite.
I also thank you for coming in. But this is tremendous. This time, I'd like to present the chef with a medal, which we do with all our distinguished visiting chefs. We do have a medal, which is a distinguished visiting chef medal. And Chef Cooper is the 157th distinguished visiting chef. So Chef Cooper, if you don't mind, I would like to present you with our medal. So I do a certificate here. It says Johnson Wales University. Be it known by those present that Ann Cooper, CEC, Distinguished Visiting Chef, is hereby presented the Distinguished Visiting Chef Award for her outstanding commitment and contribution to culinary education. So Chef Cooper, thank you very much.
Thank you. And I want to thank you all for having good questions, for caring about these issues. And I really hope that, you know, even though we didn't have one hand in the beginning of anyone who thought that they might go into this, that maybe, and I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but that maybe some of you will want to. My email address is on my calendars. It's also ann@chefann.com. I have a website, which is lunchlessons.org. Again, you can find me on Twitter and Facebook. If you're interested, if you have thoughts, comments, questions, please get in touch with me. If you're looking for work, let me know. I'm looking for staff. And if you're looking for internships, let me know, because I know a lot of people who are looking for people. So thank you very much. Have a great day.